because I refuse to not be first.
Do we do enough? Well, I never shut up about it.
It must have been about 16, 17. We nicked their guilt rings. Right, the bouncer's guilt ring.
This is no good for me. That's the reality. If you want the honest truth, and I see it every day.
This is Mohammed for IFLTV, proudly sponsored by Everlast. So, Gareth, the latest news in the heavyweight division is regarding Anthony Joshua and Dillian Whyte. We know Friday lunchtime, Eddie Hearn, promoter of Anthony, sent Dillian's team a contract. Dillian's come out today on talkSPORT. You'd have seen, of course, and said that he's not happy with it because in the initial offer there was no talk about a rematch clause, but in this contract it states that if he beats Anthony Joshua, there will have to be a rematch. So, yeah, your thoughts on that?
Well, good evening, Umar, first of all. A very happy Monday to you. Yeah, I mean, look, this obviously emanated from a conversation that Dillian Whyte had on talkSPORT last week with Whyte and Jordan, where he outlined an outlaid where he'd had a three-line email, and it looked like he was being bypassed by Eddie Hearn. They weren't particularly happy with the offer, Dillian Whyte's team at the time, his lawyers and his team. But he said he really wanted the fight. That was put out there in broad loudspeaker terms by talkSPORT, did a great job of doing it. And obviously Eddie Hearn responded. He was in New Orleans at the time. I know he was in New York, wasn't he, with Berlanga and Quigley, not New Orleans, that was a week before. And, you know, rightly so, they should be looking to make this fight because it's a big fight in Britain. It's not for a world title, but there's great rivalry. These guys are at second phase of their careers. It's still, for me, a very big fight in the heavyweight division. And obviously, as Dillian's outlined today, he thought he was getting a simple contract, but they want a rematch clause. Obviously, they're protecting their interests with this fight being lined up with Deontay Wilder in the Middle East, which would be later, of course, if Dillian was to win that fight, because they want a second fight with him. So you can kind of understand where they're coming from, because I think they are the A side in this. I don't think there's much doubt about that. Anthony Joshua doesn't need Dillian Whyte. I'm sure he wants to fight him. And I think Dillian probably, say needs the fight, but it's a better fight for him than anyone else out there right now. But you can also understand Dillian's side, where he feels that if I beat Anthony Joshua, I should have the right to then press on and face Deontay Wilder. But those aren't the talks ongoing at the moment. It might not be Deontay Wilder because Andy Ruiz and Deontay Wilder are pushing hard for a contest. They've both been in touch saying they're ready. Andy Ruiz from his training camp, Deontay Wilder from a swimming pool somewhere, was it? Certainly it looked like a country. It was house, yeah. I've been to Alabama, but not to his house. But these are all the moving parts at the moment. And I think Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua are saying, look, these are the conditions. That's one of the things that Dillian said was in it. He said there are some other hoops he's going to have to jump through, that they can move the date and all those kind of things and the location. I hope this fight doesn't stall. I think it's the right fight for both men. And I think the winner does deserve to move on. But it's up to Eddie and Anthony that if they want to create this in the deal. I mean, I hope Dillian doesn't sidestep or go sideways because this is the situation. He's clearly taken a lesser purse than he thinks he deserves. I'm thinking, I don't know the details here, but one imagines it's a couple of $1 million. And he's looking at a massive fight with Wilder or Ruiz, I say, but probably Wilder, in Saudi Arabia and looking at a game-changing event. I think you can look at it two ways. They're being unfair to him. They've lowballed him with the offer in his terms. He's accepted it, but now they've made conditions. They're saying you can't have your cake and eat it. If you want this fight, this is the conditions. And we'll see, I suppose, in the next couple of days. Now, what are we, 6 weeks away from August the 12th? 6.5 weeks. This fight has got to be closed pretty soon. It's got to be closed down on the contract.
Well, it's not going to happen, though, is it? I can't see either person budging on this.
I think Dillian should budge on it. I think he should take the rematch clause because all that does is pushes the Saudi fight later. That's all it does. And if he has a humdinger with Anthony Joshua, the second fight with Anthony Joshua will make him a ton of money anyway. Hopefully, we don't know the ins and outs of the purse split on the rematch clause, but I imagine it'll be very favourable towards him.
That's a good point. We don't know the reverse split.
No.
All the terms.
And nor should we. They should be doing this behind closed doors. Dillian's airing this in public because it started on talkSPORT, and he's leveraging the power of talkSPORT to get into the Hearn stroke Joshua mindset. Nothing wrong with that at all. Use everything in your power to reclaim the right to have this fight with Anthony Joshua. I'd take it. He's got a great opportunity if he goes in there. They don't like each other. Both men will be up for it. I hope this fight goes ahead. I really do. It'll be an amazing fight in August if we get it.
Let's say Dillian doesn't take the fight because of the rematch clause situation. What other opponents do you see realistically for Anthony in August? And do you think you'll fight in August?
He may wait it out. He may look. When did he fight? February, April, 1st of April. So a fight for him, if he waits for Wilder and Ruiz outcome in December, it's not the end of the world. He can continue to work away with Derek James in Texas. But, you know, there are other guys out there. Agit Kabayel, Otto Wallin. Eddie's mentioned these. I know. It's not favourite. Listen, it's a very frustrating
Wallin,
heavyweight.
if you're going in with Wilder, I don't see him and Derek James, as in Anthony and Derek James, wanting a southpaw to prepare for Deontay Wilder. It doesn't really make sense. So
No, maybe not in those terms. Maybe not. But I'm just throwing out potential opponents around the 10-11 mark in the division. They just want to win, don't they? But if with Dillian Whyte, that could do numbers. That does numbers. That's a big fight for DAZN, in my view. It will be a DAZN fight, I imagine. Dillian's a free agent, I think, at the moment, isn't he?
free agent, yeah.
Yeah. So it's the same conversation with who's the right opponent for Tyson Fury, who's, again, I think today, teased that there's going to be an announcement coming. I haven't had any tease yet about an announcement this week. But, I mean, I'm pushing for the sources to try and come up with a date or a time where this is going to be revealed. But Tyson Fury's clearly in camp and training, isn't he?
Yeah. He said it's, in his words, show-stopping, this announcement, whatever it's going to be.
Well,
next.
let's hope so. Yeah. Well, it's not John Jones. It's not Francis Ngannou. A bit of me wondered if they were going to drag Jarrell Miller back into the reckoning, you know, because he's got a name because of what he did wrong. And he's back and fought once, hasn't he? But the only big names for Tyson Fury to fight right now are Alexander Usyk, Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder again, Andy Ruiz. That's it. That's it, in my view. Yes, Frank Sanchez, WBC number 4, Flip Hrgovic, the winner of Zhang Joyce 2. We're hearing that's going to be announced fairly soon, maybe even this week. But that won't leave enough time. That's going to be in September. Fury's supposed to be fighting in September. You don't know. Joshua and Fury could end up both waiting out for fights in Saudi Arabia later in the year. That is a possibility. I don't want that to happen, and none of us do, but that is a possibility.
What do you think the Saudis are thinking right now with, you know, talks about Wilder facing a former heavyweight champion in Andy Ruiz? Obviously, Wilder would go in as favourite. But if Wilder fights Ruiz and maybe Joshua fights Dillian Whyte, they're probably looking at it and not best pleased, really.
Well, it's not up to them. If they want fights now, then book the fights now. You know, we know it's too hot there in the summer and those kind of factors. But, you know, look, to be fair to Amir Abdullah, every time the head of skills challenge in Saudi Arabia works for Prince Khalid, and I've known Amir a long time, every time I interview him, he talks sense. Every time I speak to him, he knows that these guys ought to have a summer fight. All these names we're mentioning, and then they do the actual deal. The contract gets offered for these fights that are being talked about in November and December. If they sign a deal now for November and December with any of these guys we mentioned, these fights in the summer are massive jeopardy fights. It doesn't make sense. You can't. anything can happen in these heavyweight fights. All of these fights we mention, anything can happen to scupper the fights that we're talking about in Saudi Arabia in December between Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk for the undisputed title, if that goes ahead, and also Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua, which is also another thrilling prospect, Umar. But we're no different today than we were a week ago or 3 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago when this fight between Fury and Usyk for, what was it, April the 29th, collapsed at Wembley Stadium. We're no further on right now. It's just conjecture, and it's people arguing or putting their points of view out in public, in the media, on forums. It's not, and we've only got bits of the evidence, not all of it. So everyone's putting their point of view. Dillian's doing a great job of trying to get this fight going again. I hope they sign, and I hope he says, fine, take the money, take the rematch clause. If he beats Anthony Joshua, it's fantastic for him anyway. You know? Why not fight Joshua a third time? Fantastic. If he knocks him spark out, he may not want to fight him again.
Depends on the money about the rematch, though, doesn't it? That is a big point.
It does. But he's not telling us about that.
No.
We haven't heard about that. So, I mean, I'm sure Dillian will reveal more in the next few days anyway as this comes to a head. And if it doesn't happen, I'm sure we'll know exactly what the rematch clause conditions were.
Just to finish off, obviously there's been news about Conor Benn as well tonight. Give us your thoughts on that, Gareth.
Well, obviously they have spoken to Matt Lawton of the Times. Obviously Matt went to speak to him. I had Matt on the talkSPORT show after he'd been to interview Conor Benn at his house. Unfortunately, Conor Benn won't give me an interview at the moment because of his feelings towards my views on what's happened in the last, 9 months now, isn't it? Since these events last October when the Conor Benn Chris Eubank fight was pulled by the Boxing Board of Control. I go back to the same thing. I'm really glad he's doing a hearing. If his medical team believe that clomiphene is in his system because of a surfeit of eggs, you know, the clomiphene is not allowed in eggs in the UK. If he's taken a rogue load of eggs, this was offered by the World Boxing Council, if you recall, in their summarization back in, was it late February now, or mid-February? You know, this has stretched out a long time. And I think I clearly remember him saying at the time he wasn't accepting that as the reason, that there was something wrong in the testing. But now they're accepting that's fair enough. But why not do this right from the start? Do the same thing that Fury did in the past. He said wild boar meat. He wasn't able to box for 2 years. Canelo Alvarez did the hair follicles over the tainted meat in Mexico. Who else can I think about?
Dillian Whyte.
Dillian Whyte as well did his case. They got exonerated. And he probably will get exonerated. The interesting thing is, if they've got the evidence to show that, even though they're backtracking in a way with a new team, great, provide the evidence, and he'll either get a favourable resolution where they completely believe him. If they don't go strict liability and they go last time, who knows? He could get 6 months. So he fights again in September, which I said to you before, fitted with the timeline of Eddie Hearn saying that they could fight in September in Abu Dhabi or the UK. I'm sure that's what they're hoping, because this case began in March, so it's backdated back to March. He could have done this last October and gone to the board. I don't like hearing that he was suicidal. He's mentioned all those things, suicidal, mentally ill at the time. Of course, wouldn't wish that on anyone, but get the hearing done. I'm pleased it's coming to a head, but he might get 2 years. We don't know yet. Strict liability can be 2 years, can be 4 years. But if they have got the evidence to prove that clomiphene metabolites were caused by a surfeit of eggs in his system, then that's up to UKAD and Conor Benn and his team.
Okay, Gareth, thank you very much for your time, and we'll speak soon. All the best.
Always a pleasure. Cheers, Umar.
Because I refuse to not be first.
Do we do enough? Well, I never shut up about it.
It must have been about 16, 17. We nicked their guilt rings. Right, the bouncers' guilt rings.
This is no good for me. That's the reality. If you want the honest truth, and I see it every day,